Hi, Charles is SirBookSage here, and I want to talk about a problem that I finally figured out after episode 5 of The Rings of Power. As I've been watching this show, there's been something that just hasn't felt right, and I kind of finally figured out what it is, and I'm going to talk about that here in this video. We've been introduced to about, I think, 4 or 5 different locations on this show. We have been introduced to Lindon on the northwest coast of Middle-earth. This is the seat of the High King of the Noldor, Gil-galad. Lindon is like Noldor elves, a high society. This is where the High Court is, all the nobility, if you will, and lords of the Noldor elf community. And so you have court, you have protocols, there's all sorts of stuff there. You also have Eregion, which is where Celebrimbor is, and that's near the Misty Mountains. So a bit of a travel to Khazad-dûm, but in that general region. Eregion should be a bit more like rustic, more relaxed, because you have Noldor elves there as well, but you probably also have Sindarin and Sylvan elves. You also have dwarves who've come down from Khazad-dûm to basically work and study with Celebrimbor. Because a side tangent here for a moment, Celebrimbor is intrinsic and critical to this show. If you're going to have a show named The Rings of Power, you kind of need to have the elf who is one of the main driving forces of the creation of said rings to be one of your major characters. And so far, through 5 out of an 8-episode season 1, the few times we've seen Celebrimbor, he's been sitting around in granny robes chatting. We've got no actual work done on who he is as an elf. And he really should be one of the main characters. Like, this is the grandson of Fëanor. And if you've never read any of Tolkien's, like, Silmarillion stuff, Celebrimbor is the most renowned, like, craftsman on Arda in the Second Age. He is the greatest, whether it's an artist, whatever it is, sculptor, craftsman, metal worker, working a forge, he is the premier talent on that planet. And this is what he's known for. This, again, dwarves have come from Eregion because he's so skilled and so renowned, they want to work with him. So Eregion has a very different vibe to it than the high court sort of stuffy Lindon, where all the elite live. So you can imagine, like, elves who live and work in Lindon, like, if they take a leave for a week or two, they're probably, tailing it over to Eregion to have fun, to relax and go to a pub and party and sing and hang out with the dwarves and get into who knows what. And then they go back to the court. So far, we know absolutely nothing about either one of these elven realms. We had our establishing shot, like a drone shot, like, look how gorgeous this is, of both places. And then we've gotten absolutely nothing about the society in either place. We don't know anything about Eregion and the people living there. And then it's a very diverse culture there. And we don't know anything about Lindon. Now, again, if you've read all this stuff, you can kind of get a feel for these places. But just from a show standpoint, they've given you nothing. This is all like surface level stuff. You don't really know anything about what life is like in either of these places. And we also now have Khazad-dûm. This is the dwarves, the descendants of Durin, at the height of their civilization. And yes, we've seen inside Khazad-dûm a couple of moments here and there where Elrond is to and froing from the place. But even there, it's, here's the grandiose Khazad-dûm. Okay, that's enough. And now the rest of the time in Khazad-dûm, you're going to be in this room chatting. And this is what they keep doing with every location. It's a room in that city, a room in that community, a room inside Khazad-dûm. This is all we get. And again, there's no depth, there's no heart, nothing's lived in. You don't get any glimpse of what life is like for any of these different places. And we also have Numenor. Now, we saw Gondor, right? In, or at least Peter Jackson's depiction of Gondor. You can also see plenty of paintings of Gondor from vast Tolkien artists over the decades. Gondor in the Third Age, that is kind of the height of man. But Gondor is a pale, like, shadow of what the Numenor was in its prime. Because Numenor is humanity at its greatest height and greatest accomplishment. It should be the wonder of the world in terms of the history of men. And what we have instead is the Numenor we've gotten on the show. Now, visually stunning when you come into the main port, the main harbor. You know, you get the establishing drone shot, again, just like you've gotten in each place. But can you honestly say you have any idea what it's like to live in that capital city? They've really given us almost nothing at all about who the Numenorians are. I mean, okay, we know there's some guild masters that forge steel. We know that. And we know there's a Queen's Guard, and there's a couple of other guilds, because Elrond just kind of mentions that these things exist. We haven't seen any of them. Even the whatever guild masters for this forging steel, we've seen like 3 guys who are kind of dicks, and that's about it. But nothing feels like it's a real lived-in place. Does anybody have a job? Does anybody in any of these places we live in, other than a couple of guards, does anybody actually do anything? Because there's to and froing in the background everywhere, but is anyone actually living? Because this show's giving us nothing at all to show us that there's life in these places, that these are real people with real lives and real passions and real rivalries and motivations and challenges and competition. And like even in court in Numenor, where's the Queen's Guard? We only reason we know she has one is because Elrond mentioned it to Isildur. Not Elrond. Elendil mentions it to Isildur when he's berating Isildur, because that's what pretty much Isildur's entire time is, just getting berated. But we haven't seen the Queen's Guard. Is there a council of trusted advisors? Are there noble houses? Are there rival factions at court? Any clue at all? Anything about these people at all? We know there's this one style of dress with the stripes that, let's just make 1/3 of the population wear that. But we're not going to tell anybody why they would be wearing this. We're not going to attach any cultural or ideological significance to it. It's just save on wardrobe work. So, and this is now a growing problem. And even the same when the Tirharad village, and then down on the south, the humans down there where Bronwyn lives. Do we know anything at all about these people, about what life is like? They're dirtier there. Their clothes are not as clean, and it's muddy roads. But other than them just not being as advanced, I mean, we don't really know anything about any of these places and the people who live in them. Like, there's nothing that gives any of them actual real substance and life and meaning. Like, again, if you go and you read Tolkien, right? Read The Hobbit, read the opening to the Fellowship of the Ring. You know what it feels like to be in the Shire. I mean, the way Tolkien writes, it gets in your bones. You understand what it feels like to be there. You understand what life is like in that place. And he brings each location alive through his writing, and he makes these seem like real places. Because there's people there, there's personality. You can tell that this is a genuine place. Like, Tolkien could walk you through every single corner of each of these places he's envisioned. And it shows in his writing. And this is one of the strengths of Peter Jackson's trilogies. Whatever you might think of his visual aesthetic choices Jackson chose for each of these, for Rohan, for Gondor, for the elves, you know, whether you like them or don't like them, or you think they should have been done a different way, they all feel lived in. They feel real. When you walk into the Prancing Pony in Bree, that feels like a real place. And we don't have anything. At most, this feels like a kind of a stage set. And not even a Broadway stage set, which are pretty intricate and fascinating, but, you know, like a And no offense to town community theater, but this is kind of more like that. Even the costumes are very generic. And it's really disappointing. Because forget the plot for a second, but let's put that aside, because that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother story. It's just, again, my point here is they've given no life or depth to anything. If you've ever seen the movie Blazing Saddles, what is it? Rock Ridge, right? What Amazon has given us is the fake town of Rock Ridge, the residents of Rock Ridge build to fool the bad guys near the end of the movie. That's what Amazon has given us. They haven't given us the living, breathing Rock Ridge town. They've given us the fake, mocked-up version of it. And it really, really drags the show down. Again, even if we had a good plot, this world they're presenting is soulless. It doesn't have any of the life that Tolkien wrote. Nothing at all. None of these people look any different from each other. The only thing that distinguishes the elves from humans is they put Spock ears on them. They're missing that sort of ethereal otherworldliness. And these are immortal beings. So they operate in a very different, like, sort of existential existence almost, besides the physical one. And the Númenóreans are humanity at its ultimate expression of humans. They are much bigger, much stronger, live much longer than the rest of the humans on this world. Because the Númenóreans are a descendant of the original, like the Edain humans, and the Dunedain that Aragorn is part of are descendants of the Númenóreans. So, like Elendil is 7'11". These are very big and strong and powerful people. And Halbrand is presented to us as though he's from the Southlands, from like near Bronwyn's village. Okay, he should be like, the Númenóreans should be towering over him. That would be like you or me going out and hanging out with the Lakers. I mean, they would tower over you. There'd be a clearly distinct physical disparity in just general body size. Because NBA players are just physically, it's a physical sport where the height is a critical part of it. And that's what the Númenóreans would be like. The Númenóreans would be like an NBA team, and the Halbrand and the Southern humans would be like a high school team, that kind of physical disparity between them. And there's nothing, this show has put not an ounce of work into showing the stark physical differences and between these different peoples and different societies and different races, or whatever you want to call them. Again, there's no life to anything here. And I'm really, really surprised, because even if the plot, again, even if the plot's not good, you would expect the world to still be rich and vibrant. And they haven't even been able to do that. And it's because they don't have a concrete story. It's because they're plucked, like I said, events from 3,500 years and just thrown them together to try to come up with something. They can't concentrate on any aspect, any part of this story for any legitimate amount of time that it needs to actually feel and breathe. Like, you can read the opening chapter of The Hobbit, the opening chapters of Fellowship of the Ring, The Long Expected Party. And you can close your eyes and you can hear the Shire. You can smell the Shire. You can, it's home. It feels like home. Those people, the characters who inhabit it, make it feel like home. And there's nothing of that in this show. And that's really, really disappointing. Because if at least Middle-earth, or in the different places we've been shown, at least if those felt alive, it could make up for the plot just kind of really sucking so far. Because the plot they can fine-tune and work as they go into the next seasons. But if they can't get the soul and aliveness of Middle-earth, they can't get that right, then nothing works right without that. Visually, when we get those establishing shots, gorgeous, beautiful. But then there's nothing at all. This is the capital of the greatest city humanity has ever built in the entire history of that planet. And the main town square at the heart of this human empire, if you will. It's like a courtyard in an apartment building. That's how big it is. Just think of like the main like squares in your old European towns. Like just picture those and how big they are. That's what we should have here. And they're keeping everything so small because, and which is bizarre because this is the most expensive like TV show in history. They supposedly have like a $60 million budget per episode. So I don't know where the money's going. Because certainly not on sets, not on sets at all. But I don't want to get off in a separate tangent, because I'm probably going to make a whole video about how Numenor has apparently decided to go to war and how just utterly absurd and idiotic that scene is. Let me know down below in the comments if you watch the show. Do you agree that none of these places feel alive and lived in and real? Or do you think I'm missing something? Do you think I'm being too harsh? Because I don't see any. We haven't been given anything of Lindon and anything of Eregion, like at all. And we got, like I said, a couple of walkthroughs of Elrond walking on that one sort of causeway or whatever. But everything else has just happened in a room in each place. Again, I want to hear from you, because I do want to hear people's opinions about this show. Because I've heard all the negative opinions, but I'm curious if there's someone who actually likes this. I'm just curious as to what it is you like about it. And I am genuinely curious, because I'm not going to wait for you to say something so I can go, look what this fool in the comments said. I shall now make a 20-minute video. You know, no, I don't do any of that crap. So I am genuinely curious of what you enjoy about the show, because there's very little I enjoy about this. And I wanted this to be the greatest TV show of all time because Tolkien's Legendarium is my favorite literature of all time. I was hoping we would get something that would dethrone Doctor Who as the greatest TV show. But sadly, this doesn't dethrone even the worst Doctor Who episode that's ever been made. So, very disappointing. But we have more seasons to go. Hopefully, they will figure out what they're doing wrong and begin to make those corrections as they move forward. Because these places need to feel alive. You need to feel like you can picture yourself in any of these locations and understand these people. But again, there's nothing, like even the Tir-Harad people down in there, we don't know anything about them at all. Why is there no town council? No one's in charge of anything? Like even the elves, like Arondir and the Sylvan elves who are tasked with overseeing that portion of Middle-earth. Where do they live? How come we weren't shown where do they live? Because Arondir isn't in this town 24/7. It kind of, you get the feel he shows up maybe once a month and he tours the region. So where are they? What's their life like? Because they're Sylvan elves, but they're down here kind of away from the rest of Elven society. So a very big missed opportunity to not show us what their life is like living out here in this sort of outer perimeter outside of the world that they know and are used to. So, you know, I'm just flabbergasted at the choices the show has made. I just don't understand it at all. Click up here to watch my Rings of Power playlist, and there'll be another video on the screen somewhere, probably recommended. And I will see you in the next video, and definitely let me know down in the comments. I am Charles the SirBookSage. Happy reading.